Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of Top Billers Toolkit, where me and my twin brother interview top billers from all around the globe to unlock the secrets to their success. Today's guest is Graham Cosgrave. Graham is a 520k biller, and for nearly a decade he built his entire recruitment business in Ireland. Same market, same playbook, consistent results, until everything stopped working. The market dried up, opportunities dried up, and he was forced to pivot. So he made a decision that a lot of recruiters find uncomfortable. He went global. In this episode, we're going to be breaking down how Graham used AI tools like Gemini to identify new markets, flew to Abu Dhabi to test his 30-second pitches to win new business, built an insane candidate pipeline by meeting 1,000 doctors in person on a single trip. Graham's episode is the epitome of why getting in the room is still one of the most important BD tactics that recruiters can be doing. As usual, grab a cuppa or a glass of wine, depending on when you're listening to this, and let's get into it, shall we? Wait a second, guys. Quick question for you. If you could land a new client on LinkedIn in the next couple of weeks, how much would that be worth to you? 20, 30, maybe 40k? Well, we have a pretty crazy offer on right now. If you are a recruitment business owner, then we will work with you for free and write you 2 posts at absolutely no cost. And here's the cool part. Other recruiters that have come through this free trial have managed to win new clients. They've racked up hundreds of thousands of impressions and started conversations with top tier candidates. It's completely risk-free, so you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. If you're interested, the link's in the description below. If not, no worries. We hope you enjoy the podcast. See you later. Graham, thank you so much for joining us today in Top Billers Toolkit. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Ben and Sam.
Awesome. Really excited about this episode. I mean, I'm excited about every episode, but this one's a little bit different. That's why I'm quite excited about this one. But let's go into the first question, as always. What's the number one tool in your toolkit, whether it be a mindset, strategy, or software?
I think it's definitely mindset. I guess with any industry within recruitment, there's ups and downs, and I think you have to, in terms of staying consistent, you have to have a consistent attitude towards what you're doing, whether it's delivery for clients or for candidates. So mindset is definitely our key focus across the team. And even when looking at targets, breaking that down to how many heads does that look like and what actions are sort of assigning individual candidates to those names and then assigning actions to those names and following suit there. So mindset is our mindset is very much around not just numbers, but those individuals behind those numbers and what actions we can take around those individuals to make that happen.
Awesome. On the topic of mindset, Graham, I know that last year you made a big pivot from Ireland to the Middle East. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of focal point of the conversation. What forced that decision? What forced that pivot in the first place? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, it might be helpful maybe to just give context on us. So we're, if you can't tell, Irish-based, Irish-owned medical recruitment agency, and for close to the last decade, we've been solely looking at bringing doctors into Ireland. And as you mentioned, Ben, only recently now looking at another additional territory. So not taking our focus totally off Ireland, but just an additional stream, and I guess an additional option for the international doctors that we're dealing with, and that being the Middle East. And I guess a number of factors played into that decision. One being the Irish market. There's been a few changes here, and that just the processes are probably a little bit slower. And also, recognizing as much as I like my country, Ireland isn't for everyone. So it's as I said, an additional option to pose to our candidates, and as a region, and no doubt, people within your network across different sectors within recruitment will see the Middle East is by far and away one of the regions in the world that's rapidly growing. And we just saw that as an opportunity to just test the waters and see what we can do there.
Interesting. Awesome. The first thing that comes to my mind, Graham, is we spoke to another top biller on our podcast, must have been a month ago, and he went from the UK to the US. So he had a huge UK market, wanted to go out to the US. And one subtle nuance that made a massive difference to how he won business was his tone on the phone. So British people apparently a bit more pessimistic, and they're okay if you're like a bit sad on the phone or sound a bit like low energy. But with Americans, the one thing he had to do was get on the phone and sound a bit happier and more like enthusiastic. And that one change, believe it or not, made a huge difference to how US people perceive him. Anyway, that's a long winded way of saying, is there any subtle nuances that you had to change going into the Middle East in terms of how you do business, how you speak to people? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's definitely a fair point. It's something I stress that it's still early doors for us, but even still, and as we learn as we're growing in the region, what we're definitely finding is having to slow down a little bit more, and it is very relationship based, and it is very in-person relationship based. So that's why we've already had one trip out to Abu Dhabi in a week's time. Or next week, I'm heading out to Dubai myself for the first time to go to the World Health Expo, where we're properly testing that in-person piece and in-person way of doing business really isn't that big a thing in Ireland when it comes to doctors specifically, which is the area that we're in. If we have a doctor, we'll find a hospital who needs that doctor. Whereas I guess if there's a bunch of Irish guys trying to do the work remotely in the Middle East, there's a bit of hesitation there. So we certainly have plans, not yet to be full time there, but to spend a bit more time there in person to build on those relationships. And again, just due to the scale of the growth that's happening out there, getting in with one or two of the big hospital groups will be game changing for our operations. So putting a lot of value on that in-person time that we have out there.
Really
Love that.
interesting. So just to kind of summarize that, you're finding that in the Middle East, it's very much in person, it's relationship driven. I'm guessing you have to brunch and take them out to dinner, and those kind of relationships are formed through those activities, as opposed to cold calling with a good offer or a great candidate. It's not going to work the same way as it does in the West.
Yeah, I don't know,
Yeah.
yeah, that will vary, and we're definitely seeing different appetites there. But I think it's for us, we have to change to know that there's not a one size fits all. And to I guess the only way of learning that is actually getting out there in person and understanding not just getting a requirement, but understanding a hospital group's growth plans and how a particular talent that we might have within our sphere might support with that particular growth. As opposed to here in Ireland, it's a case of we're replacing someone who's moved on to a different hospital or a different scheme. There isn't the same growth as the scale is currently in the Middle East.
Hmm.
Cool.
Really interesting. I'd love to go into the market research piece and that process, Graham, because I know there's so many UK and probably US, but more so UK, so many UK recruiters that want to go into the US. I think US recruiters are quite happy working just in the US. There's plenty of money there. But I know that there's a lot of UK recruiters that want to go into the US and they don't
You
really
mean
know where
Middle
to
East, Brit?
start. No, no, US, but I'm saying the principle is similar. Like
Oh, I
if you
see.
just let me finish, um, they want to go to the US and they don't know where to start. And a good place to start would be market research. And so you've kind of done that, Graham. You've identified a potential market. You did the market research and you went out there and you kind of proved that there was demand. So can we talk about the market research process? What did it entail? And then how did you know that you found like how did you know when you were like, okay, yes, the stars are aligned, this makes sense, let's do it?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I mightn't have a huge amount for others to go off in terms of basing the research wholly, if everyone put it that way, because a few stars have aligned, Ben, but not all of them. So I said it's because of the different pace that we're dealing with, and I know that Ireland's slowing down, but in terms of getting new business on, the pace is certainly quite different to that, whether it be in the UK or in Ireland. So I guess to bring us back to where our research began, we're probably talking summer of last year, where we saw the real effect of some of those changes happening in Ireland, where hospitals were more risk averse and more slower in their processes. So we thought, okay, we can't just continue being solely dependent on Ireland. So where else could we be looking at? And there's a whole variety of tools out there. There's a whole variety of AI, things you can pick up. But Gemini is actually just a recommendation from another Irish agency who's done a similar thing ahead of us, and they're now in the sort of the financial and tech space. But a contact of mine who I know from my Irish network has done this, and their recommendation was dive into Google's Gemini AI support tool, and ask for a market analysis report on where specifically within doctor recruitment in the world is there a growth spurt happening or a growth phase
Mm,
happening. And it was very evident. They'd identified the US to a degree, but I think we can all agree, depending on your sector, but I think we can all agree there's probably a little bit too volatile, particularly within the healthcare space to go into the US. But within the Middle East, there's a lot of draw there. There's a lot of pull. We talk about push and pull factors when we're talking international recruitment, and there's a lot of pull to the Middle East. It certainly changed. There's probably less draw that there might have been maybe 10 years ago, but there's still enough of a draw there. So using a Gemini asking for a report on, okay, so now that we've identified the UAE is an area for us to delve into, what specific niche should we be looking at? And from that research, we found there isn't a concern over the shortage of doctors out there in the region, but there is a question mark over the consistency in terms of the experience that they have. So
mm,
that got us thinking even more about a niche within a niche. So that's the I guess how we're pitching ourselves is the super subspecialist consultant physicians who are Western or North American trained. In the Middle East, what we're finding definitely is it's a reputation game, and all the hospital groups want to outdo the other one and do something different to the other one, and to stay relevant and competitive. I think talent feeds into that massively. So having the best, if we're talking about North America, having the best North American pediatric neurologist, that's going to do a huge amount for their client base or their active patient base. Because it is, I guess there are similarities too between the Middle East healthcare system and the US that is largely insurance driven. So the American physicians would get that similarity. Now it isn't
mm.
as commercial, but it's still very much commercial in effect that if a doctor can bring in a lot of patients and a lot of revenue, that's a high performing doctor. Whereas I'm sure all of us will agree being based in Europe in a national health service or universal healthcare system, it's very much the opposite, isn't it? It's more about patient care as opposed to the commercial private side of things. So it is for any UK consultants going out there, it is quite a shift.
Mm.
So there's I guess a bit of a candidate education piece depending on where we're bringing people from, but very much so, as I said, the Americans is our pitch.
Mhm.
It is those super subspecialists who are going to elevate their service even further as they expand throughout the region. So in a
Interesting.
nutshell, that's the main guts of what came out from the research that we undertook.
And I'm absolutely fast. I think it's such an amazing time we live in where you can type some questions into Gemini and literally get
Mm.
pointed into a new market. Whereas, 10, 15 years ago, you probably have to hire research specialists to do that and spend tens of thousands. And so my question
And
is, Graham,
weeks and weeks, Sam, as well,
yes,
doing that type
yes,
of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
potentially even months, you're right. And so my
Mm.
question is, the research and the niche that you have chosen, I know you've just begun this niche, Graham, but are you seeing signs of verifying your research? Like from what Gemini is saying, does it seem like it's a correct choice in the niche to make?
It's definitely matching up, and a part I neglect to include, following that first initial piece of research, we said, it said pointing all in that direction, but then I wanted to query it even further and say, okay, so this is what we're seeing online. Let's now test that in person. And I put in then what upcoming conferences in the region within healthcare are coming up that we could get out there in person to fully feel this out. And that brought us to Abu Dhabi back in November, where we went to the Healthcare Leaders Summit. And within that room, and it was a fairly closed off, pretty small number of people there, but they were all the big players of all the large hospital groups out there, like the Mediclinic and American Hospital Group and Saudi German Hospital, all these big major players who were out there, all in this room, myself and my colleague. James, an adopted Irishman, but very much an Englishman. The two of us headed out there, and as I mentioned to you previously, Ben, like properly putting our pitch out there, door stopping in person these big heavy hitters at this conference to fully properly in person test this I guess new venture for us. And as I said, it that those interactions was enough for us to say, okay, there's something tangible here. There's something for us to go off here to really dedicate more time to.
Mm,
I
love
absolutely
that.
love that. Can I just, because this is so important and so interesting, and I think other recruiters are going to learn so much from this. So, you wanted to find a new market. You used Gemini's research. Gemini directed you towards Abu Dhabi or the Middle East. You created a 30-second pitch and then went to where these people are in person. And then you kind of tested this pitch that Gemini had enforced, and turns out that it was correct. Which I just think is like a process for market research is brilliant, finding it and then verifying it. And then I guess my question is, what was the 30-second pitch, Graham? What were you saying to these people that managed to
Yeah,
verify your research?
yeah. In short, I guess, starting off with inflating one's ego, saying what a great talk you recently, or you just post, or you just hosted there, but then leading into, we're very clearly Irish, coming here, looking to bring a new service to the region, and that is they have a sort of a tiered system. So tier one super subspecialist from the likes of North America and Europe, and I think it that was supported by the fact that some of the heavy hitters right now in the UAE are American, are South African, are
Mm.
from the UK. So it's again appealing to those people. So even just without naming names, one of the CEOs that we met with within the longevity space is American, and our even 10-second pitch to them was, what about getting more Americans into your setup? And this individual said, yes, great. And in person introduced me to their operations lead, who was like, you need to be chatting to these guys. And we had a follow-up meeting with them in person the following day. That type of stuff. And another, we've in terms of our operation in Ireland, we have uh, uh, great success with South doctors. And they seem to have, I don't know if it's the same in the UK, but they're all over the world in terms of their reputation. And we one of who happened to be one of the heads of one of the big groups out there in the Middle East, also South African, just happened to be the week before the Bucks were playing Ireland in Dublin in the rugby. And my first line to this head of hospital out in Abu Dhabi was, "Please go easy on us for the rugby next weekend." And he's like, "Well, no, I've got a bone to pick with you. I need to get my travel permit in time so I can actually make the match there." So again, that in-person
Mm,
sort of informal rapport building, nothing beats that.
yeah.
And we had to be able to do that in person. So as I was saying, as you I think probably over kindly, Sam, in terms of informing our decision making. Yes, we used Gemini. We then went out to test it in person. Dare I say, we're still continuously testing it, and as I said, next week again, we're going to be testing in person too when we're heading out to Dubai to do exactly that, but on a different scale again to what we did in Abu Dhabi to get a few more of those bites from some of the other players out there, and small, medium, and large players, because we're talking, one individual specialist could transform a small setup, and one individual specialist could also skyrocket a large player too. And for us, the fee is the same regardless of which or relatively the same regardless of which setup we interact with. But we're open to working with those who see the value in a tier one super subspecialist who has that Western or North American background to them.
Mm,
Love that.
really interesting. You've got a question, Ben?
Yeah, I'll just would you say that the pitch was generated mostly from the Gemini research, or was there anything else in between the Gemini research and the pitch that you found out, Graham, that formed the pitch, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I'm not going to give Gemini credit for this, though. Our team put together the pitch. I think just from our own decade plus experience working with doctors, and I guess it was somewhat informed. We didn't verbatim say Gemini,
Yeah.
give me a 30-second pitch. It was more okay. We're piecing together bits that we know ourselves, bits that
Got it.
we've gathered from speaking to doctors over the 10 plus years, and also our recent interactions with testing the market with doctors who are within our network. We previously might have said, what about Ireland? And now we have this second option about the Middle East, and put all that together to put together our pitch. So I think a big takeaway for anyone listening to this is don't be solely reliant on one source or one tool when it comes to forming your overall understanding of a new territory. I think AI has there's some great tools out there, but don't be solely beholden to one. Equally, don't go the other direction and have so many different sources you don't know where to even start.
Mm,
Mm.
love that.
Something you said, Graham, before, and it made me think. So, if I'm not mistaken, one good North American doctor could completely transform or have a huge impact on a hospital in Abu Dhabi or in the Middle East. So, that leads me to believe that these candidates are extremely valuable and difficult to get hold of because there must be other people having similar conversations. Maybe it's more of a unique niche, but they must be sought after. And so my my brain instantly goes to, are they hard to get hold of? And if they are, how are you managing to get hold of them and, entertain a conversation about the Middle East? Is there a magic formula
Yeah.
that you're using?
I'm not going to say and big ourselves up here, Sam, and say there isn't a secret sauce, but I guess like in any of your guests that you've spoken to in the past, there is. Like I'm in this over a decade, and you're still always learning. You're still always, and I think the more conversations you have, the more learning you're getting from each of those interactions. I mentioned previously how we operate, just understanding all the push and pull factors globally. And I'm not going to say I'm massively into politics, but I think it's valuable to have a surface level knowledge of regional politics because that does create movement in the work market or the
Mm,
the talent market. And we particularly point on North America. We could spend a whole while now talking about why people would want to be leaving there currently. There's an active medical brain drain happening in the US right now, and
mm,
it's no doubt happening across other sectors too. And for us in Ireland, particularly, Ireland is always going to be our primary focus. Ireland is tiny though, so we wouldn't be there isn't as much of demand. There still absolutely is a demand, but there isn't as much elsewhere. So we want to give those people those alternate options. But those definitely there's a strong draw for people to when we talk about Ireland, Irish Americans, we're hamming that stereotype up as much as we possibly can at the moment because that's what's drawing a lot of Americans this way. But others are thinking, I've achieved a huge amount in my career. If we're talking about the US right now, there's enough politically to move them out. But they're thinking, what other interesting thing, what other unique thing could I add to my career, my CV, let's say, and setting up a unit or bringing research to a new region or that type of stuff is appealing for people that may not be present in the US. It certainly wouldn't be present here in Ireland at scale. So why not go somewhere totally new and shiny, I guess, and set up a brand new unit from scratch and have that reputation then follow you. So one particular talking about sort of Ireland or more so at home, one particular senior medical individual that we're speaking to at the moment is coming towards the end of their tenure and their current contract, and they're like, my kids have grown up, myself and my wife are looking for just a change of scene for a few years, and I'd like to do something just that little bit different. That's quite appealing. And then when we look at, and this is where there's differences in each territory, I guess, that we're looking at when it comes to candidate pools. Within the UK, yeah, we don't need to shy away too much from this, but consultant salaries are probably one of the lowest in the UK across all of Europe. So money alone is a big draw.
Mm.
Coupled with the fact the UK, which I think is amazing, and Ireland is the same on a smaller scale, but is incredibly multicultural. And those different demographics play into moving closer to that part of the world. So, for example, if you might have an Indian born but UK trained rheumatologist that still has family back home or has aging parents back home and wants to move closer to there, why not move to the Middle East? It's a 4 hour journey as opposed to an 8 or 9 hour flight. So it's those kind of nuances that we're seeing depending on the sort of the talent territories, if you want to call them that, the each of the areas that we're working with.
Really interesting, Graham. Thanks for sharing. And just a quick one: what's the best way that you get hold of these doctors? They must be very busy. They're probably not on Instagram. I'm guessing they're probably not that that's a dig or anything. They're just probably a slightly older generation. And is it email? Is it a cold call? Is it you have to turn up to and see them in person? Um,
Yeah, again, just like research, it's a variety of channels. I think LinkedIn is certainly, I know it gets a bad rap, but it's certainly proven very successful for us. And we pay very little for it. We do
Mm.
the odd few campaigns on it. We have a few recruiter licenses across our team. But for the most part, it's consistent content and not just content for content's sake. It's sort of valuable ad type stuff that we put out there. We
Mm.
previously did, I'm sure you come across the guys, Sean and Amar in Hoxo. Our entire team tends to do social media marketing work with them as they join the team, and that's helped a lot of our people find their voice online, whether it's LinkedIn or elsewhere. Other than that, we've over the time, we sort of built out partners in different territories that might be similar size setups to us, but may not have access to the regions that we're in, or in a lot of cases, closed off networks of our communities of doctors that are specifically only for doctors, and we have some sort of channel there. But probably our biggest route to doctors is referrals. So if a doctor has a good experience with us and has a good interaction with us, they don't have to necessarily have moved with us in the end. But if they've a positive, informative, real view experience with us, they're more likely to refer us on to a friend of theirs, wherever they're happening to look to move.
awesome. It's really interesting, Graham. Thanks for sharing. What
I'd
else
love
have we got?
to
Go
touch
ahead, Ben.
upon the again kind of just a demonstration of the lengths that you go to, Graham, to build relationships, but the road shows. You said you ran road shows in South Africa and met over 1,000 doctors in one trip, which is pretty insane. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Why you decided to take that trip, and then a little bit about like what it entailed?
Yeah, I'll take you back probably a little bit further. So that was our most recent road show. That was March of last year. I guess to give you a bit more sense of the relationship with South African doctors in Ireland. One thing, we're not going to hold any grudges here now against the Brits, knowing I'm outnumbered on this call, guys. But the one thing that South Africans, they've an affinity to Ireland and Irish
Mm,
people because there's some
Wow.
similarities there with our past, I guess.
yeah.
And I guess what is why there's a steady stream of doctors and has been from South Africa consistently for a long while is that their medical degree is considered equivalent to the medical degree here in Ireland. So we're by far the easiest English-speaking country for South African doctors to move to. And
Mm,
again, what I mentioned earlier on about the sort of being aware of the geopolitical climate in various countries, South Africa as an incredible country it is, it has its failings and its faults, I guess. And there's a big driver for individuals to just carve out a new, safer life elsewhere. And that's always been present there. So for us in our journey within Matchbenics, we've, similar to what we did in Abu Dhabi, I guess, last year, our first time out there, probably about 7 years ago, I went to an emergency medicine conference in Cape Town and just tested the waters there to see what the appetite would be like, and in the hope we get maybe 5 or 10 come across with us in the space of a year. And that 6 to 12 months tends to be our typical candidate turnaround time, if I could call it that. So we did that. Then we did our first road show. Um, was it maybe, or sorry, our first independent roadshow maybe about 6 years ago. So the conference was 7 years ago. This our first independent one was 6 years ago, and we did two stops in Cape Town and in Joburg. And as part of that, I think we maybe had 50 people show up in each venue. And there was just a free informative session on what is involved in the move to Ireland, what to expect, and why you should be making the move. And that was our first of three roadshows that we hosted ourselves. And we do it, as I said, there's sort of 2 year gap in between each of them. The one following that, we extended it to Durban, and when we quickly saw those numbers growing, and those numbers grew, I guess the geopolitical climate changed again, and those numbers then reflected that. And we probably saw then at that point maybe 100 plus people in a room at that stage.
Wow.
And then bringing up to our most recent roadshow, 1,000 people, close to 1,000 people showed up to 6 free events we hosted across 3 cities over the course of
Wow.
a week. And what was the major difference between that and the two previous roadshows? The two previous roadshows, it was just us lowly recruiters in our team. 4 or 5 of us went out to talk about how amazing Ireland is. But again, we're not doctors, so we couldn't bring that value to it. So this time round, we brought a handful of probably 2 or 3 doctors. We brought a financial coach to talk about the being financially prepared pre and post move. We had a couple of partners when it comes to insurance and indemnity and relocation, all just trying to encompass the wider move, because we appreciate finding a job. Finding a job is actually the easiest part of an overall relocation.
Mm.
So just trying to put the overall piece together in the one session so that you're going away as informed as you possibly could be. And as I said, that's where we had, it was close to 1,000 people across 6 sessions that we had. And our final session in Cape Town, we actually did we called it a braai side chat. If you're familiar with South African barbecue,
No.
they call it braai, and they're obsessed with it, and they bring it where they go. And we thought we'd do a local play on with words on fireside chat, but a braai side chat. And we had two South African guys join us, and I interviewed them in front of 150 people in that room about their journey of moving and living and working in Ireland, and didn't want to sugarcoat it. Warts and all. What are the bad parts? What are the good parts? Why should people do it? And also identifying it doesn't work for everyone either. So we weren't just selling a pipe dream. We were making as clear a picture as possible of what's available to people if they do decide to make that move. And that was, like I said, one of the biggest to me professionally. It was probably one of my highlights of the last decade, to be able to
Wow.
see bringing the company from the very beginning, or close to the beginning, to that point of running an independent roadshow like that, and showcasing Ireland to that degree, to that number of people.
That's awesome, Graham. So the first one was 50, the first roadshow. Second roadshow was 150, and then the third one was a thousand. Is that
Yeah,
roughly?
in each room. So yeah, probably, so sorry, the first one in each room. So we're talking about two events that we did, or two sessions we did first time round, was probably collectively around 100, 120. Second time round was probably close to the 300, 400 mark, and then last time round it was close to 1,000.
Cool. And did you change any? Sorry, how did you get them in a room firstly? Because you make it sound incredibly simple, Graham, but the even to get 50 people in a room who are candidates that are in your niche is quite difficult. It's quite a difficult task. So let's go back to that first
I would like to go along the progression, but the first
Yeah,
roadshow you did, how did you get 50 people in a room? Was it as simple as messaging them and saying, we're going to be here? Did you use any other advertising like Facebook ads or?
Facebook ads. Yeah,
Oh,
Facebook
really?
is
Interesting.
historically has been the best channel for us to get to South African doctors.
Wow.
So I think even and we that's probably one of the consistent pieces throughout all of the campaigns using
Wow.
Facebook ads. And I'd say, dare I say, maybe we spent a couple hundred on Facebook ads for each of those campaigns.
Wow.
But I guess how the marketing of each of those different roadshows definitely did change and adapt over time. So first time round was just Facebook ads and word of mouth. Second time round was a bit more informed, and we did a local podcast pre that event,
Mm,
and that gave us a bit more visibility. And then the last time round, again, with the support of the Hoxo team, they've some team actually based in South Africa, and they did a bit of an in-person flyer campaign for us as well. And
mm,
they put themselves out there. They're very good to their partners, the team in Hoxo, and they flyered local hospitals and reached out to friends of friends who are doctors and that type of stuff. So there was a bit more of that, and just conveniently, uh, was it 2 weeks prior to us going, a South African recommended me to a South African journalist who was doing a piece on the brain drain happening in South Africa. And this guy was coming to Dublin to do an interview with a few South African doctors and why they moved here, and wanted to do an interview with us as well. And that was going out the following week. So at that stage, a week before our roadshow, on their national news network,
wow.
about what's available to Ireland. So look, we didn't plan that. That's sort of a bit of putting yourself out there as much as you can, saying yes to as many things as you can, and looking at whatever visibility options you can look at. And that, as I said, that just landed on our plate. And the number of messages then I had from people within our network in South Africa said, I've just spotted you on my TV, what's going on, kind of thing. So that was quite unique, but all the other stuff was very organized and very sort of planned out in terms of how to get as many bums and qualified bums on seats.
Interesting.
And then, like I say, the turnaround time then after that, we will, and we're consistently seeing people come through from the last session. Actually, we had people go to the second session and again the third session, to say, okay, we're now ready to go. The first time around was just sort of fact finding. Then the third session was like, okay, let's get this move going. So for a lot of our people, minimum turnaround time could be 6 to 12 months. Others could be 2 years. So
Wow.
sort of just maintaining that relationship and maintaining that visibility, and that tends to bring people through.
Really interesting. And I'm guessing because a lot of effort to do a roadshow in South Africa and do it 3 times in a row, I'm guessing the ROI has um, shown itself, Graham, for you to say, okay, this is this is the third time we're doing this. We can either see the potential of this or we've already seen the ROI from this. Can you dig into that a tiny bit?
Yeah, to go to the bare bones of it. Looking at the first time we went around, one hire would cover the cost.
Wow.
Second time round, probably two, maybe three hires. Our last session took maybe five hires. Would be a return on investment. So you're thinking five from 1,000 people.
Mm,
So at this point, and as I said, we're close to a year now since our last roadshow, but up until now, we probably have, in terms of the investment we put on there, we probably have multiplied that by, I'd say, easily by five or six at this stage. And
awesome.
that's early stages. We'll
Mm,
definitely get more people coming through in the next 6 to 12 months. But not only on the excuse me, on the candidate side, it's definitely elevated our game on the client side too, to say we are one of the go-to people for finding South African doctors, and more specifically, or one of the doctors that we brought out with us, is a GP, so a family medicine doctor, pretty heavily involved in the GP training program here, and we have closely partnered up with them to support them with high volume recruitment for their training program, unofficially, but that in itself has given them a brand new stream of people to come through the training program, which will feed into the wider national need for GPs that you couldn't do with the job ad. And yeah, there's no other way of recreating what we've done out there.
Love that, Graham. Well, awesome. Very, very cool. Um, Last question from me, unless Ben, you have any more. I'd love to go into your podcast, Dr. Diaries, Graham. I'm guessing reason you started that was similar to the road shows. You know, the more you can become, the more conversations you can have with the right people in your niche and become a thought leader, which is what you've already started to do with the road shows. I'm guessing the Doctor's Diaries has a similar kind of strategy. Can you talk us through? I kind of answered that for you, but I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's the right answer. Can you tell us why you started it and the impact it's had?
yeah. You're gonna laugh now and think that Sean Anderson is paying me. Sean encouraged us to do it.
Okay, cool.
We were part of the boardroom for a while, and it was an in-person session that I did with Sean and his team and a few other directors and founders and smaller, similar sized agencies in the UK. And I went to Sean and said, I've got an absolute ick about the idea of doing a podcast. And he said, just do it and see how it feels. And we're now planning season four.
Awesome.
So, we're sort of we've got the bug, I guess you can say. But for us, we're not talking about massive numbers in listenership. We're talking about real smaller volume, but quality listeners. And for us, as we've sort of developed and learned, similar to the iterations of the roadshow, we've developed over time. The first two seasons were all done virtually. And depending on how much of an operator you are, there's some things that are out of your control and other things that are within your control. We decided to, for the third season, bring it in person, and rented a space for 2 days in Dublin and
Awesome.
invited ten guests across those 2 days. And in the middle, we had a private dinner for all those guests that were invited to just sort of pick their brains and just again get to know them that little bit more. And what was different in our last season versus the two previous ones, we also had clients come along to that too and free pitch their department or their service or their hospital. So it was on a different level there. But as we found in terms of a candidate marketing piece, we purposely, and I'm not sharing a secret here, the people who we had on know this, we purposely picked guests more so for our last season based on their specialty, their where they're coming from originally, so that it would appeal to different demographics that we are trying to then bring across to Ireland. So that, for example, just yesterday I spoke to an American emergency medicine consultant in upstate New York, and I shared an episode of an American consultant we have working here now in Galway. So it's very specific to them. There's a voice and an accent that they recognize. There's a story that's similar to the pathway they're hopefully going on. And like that, we've had South Africans within family medicine. We've had Malaysians within pediatrics. So we're sort of picking those specialties and picking those nationalities where it's not just a pale skinned Irish guy talking about how amazing Ireland is. It's, people that our listeners and viewers can relate to and the story that they can relate to. And as I said, I purposely, for all three seasons, have said, we don't want you just talking about the positives about moving to Ireland. There's challenges there too, and more in particular, people moving with families. So again, cherry picking the right individual who's going to be able to sell their whole family relocation story too. So it's been quite powerful for us, and as I've said, we're planning season four too now, so that we can again get more specific people that are going to be relatable to people's stories that we're hoping to move across, and hopefully in time, once we do more work in the Middle East, we'll have a Middle East version there as well, so that we can let others, doctors, relatable voices and stories resonate with other people that might be considering the move, as opposed to a bog standard recruiter talking about how amazing my opportunities are at the moment, if you get me. So that's our
100%.
plan with Dr. Diary's Adventures to Ireland, available wherever you get your podcasts.
Love that.
Love that.
Awesome.
It's really simple, but I just want to mention how important it is to invite guests on relative to the people that you want to attract. Like if you want more of a certain type of person, it's like start speaking to more of those people in the industry. I know it's really simple, but I think a lot of recruiters forget that, like around a podcast, it's like they don't really know where to start, but it's like, okay, speak to the types of people that you want to attract and that will provide value to the people that you want to attract as well, which will typically be the same type of person, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, but in a different scenario. So just wanted to say that out loud because I thought that was a really good point, even though it was.
And that's our and I'm glad you pointed on that, Ben. That is our key thing. We want to add as much value. We're not selling anything here. We want
Mm,
to add as much value as we possibly can. And again, given our lead time, there's very few quick wins in our permanent, recruitment relocation game. So
mm,
we want to add as much relatable, real life value as we possibly can, whether it's through roadshows or through webinars or through podcasts, that's going to demystify the move for as many people as we can.
love it.
Love that. Awesome.
Brilliant.
Sorry, Ben, you see us
No,
off.
I was gonna say, Graham, thank you so much for coming on. We're nearly at the end of the podcast. I always like to end the podcast with a question. Is there anything else that we haven't spoken about, Graham? Anything else that you've learned? Any other tips? Any valuable insights that we haven't spoken about that you might want to end the podcast on?
I don't think so. Again, some of this might work for some people. Again, sometimes it is industry specific, sometimes it is, your niche specific. But I think the one thing that connects all industries within recruitment and to a degree sales, speak to more people. Get out in front of
Mm,
people as much as you possibly can. And despite our team we all work remotely across all of Ireland. And we probably see more doctors than we see our members of our team. And we encourage that as much as we possibly can, to just get out there in front of new and old clients, and get out there in front of doctors. And we're talking about the visibility piece, where possible, if meeting a doctor, they're comfortable with us sharing their story and taking a picture with them to then showcase that online. It also just demystifies the move for anyone who might be a passive passenger on LinkedIn or any of our other channels, that might think, okay, I recognize that person, or I relate to that story, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and that's the nudge I've needed. You can't, again, you can't beat that with any job board or any average job posting. Get out and talk to as many people as you possibly can, and be, regardless of your level of experience, just willing to learn every day.
love it.
Thank you, Graham.
Graham, thank you so much for coming on the pod, mate. That was a really awesome podcast, really valuable. And yeah, just really appreciate your time. So thank you.
Thanks again for having me.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. Tune in for another episode next week, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Peace and love.